Stardust, Chapter 29, Part 2. 10:07 a.m., May 15th, 2015, Stardust Lab.
This song...
Twilight thought as she gave another glance at the tablet that was blaring at her.
I love it. Equestrian scientists are aware of a lot of elements, but some of these are completely new to me. I hope that they don't really mind me taking a bit of a break to take notes on some of the elements that we haven't yet discovered yet, though I'll have to ask Charles about some of these.
Twilight looked back from the tablet of the paperwork in front of her, which included a sketch of the human's periodic table of elements and a corresponding graph of the physical elements that she was aware of from Equestria. She had been able to match about a third of the elements with ones that she was familiar with as she continued her research by researching the common usages of each element. A small collection of sketches was also slowly piling up as she recalled each of the materials that she had tested at the start of the month in the search for Arcanite. The pleasant ping of the doorbell interrupted her concentration, but after a moment's consideration, she shrugged and pushed away from the desk.
I could probably use a break.
A quick tap of her tablet paused the music before she called out.
Come on in.
The door opened and Matt stepped through with a smile. Good morning, Twilight. How you doing this morning?
I'm fine, but I should be asking you the same.
Twilight replied quickly.
Are things getting any easier for you? And how's Lena doing? Have the headaches gotten a little bit better?
I'm adjusting. I just need to get used to things, I guess. Matt nodded before heading towards the table and sitting down. Lena's getting better too. I'm pretty sure that she'll be by later today to just say hello. So, what are you up to now?
Taking a break. I finished the rough draft for a special project last night, so I sent that off to Charles before starting some new research onto the elements.
Twilight looked to the desk and pulled several items over to the guest table with her telekinesis.
I am familiar with some of them, but there are others that I've never even heard of. I was planning to wait and ask Charles about some of them, but now that you're here, I could ask you some questions.
Well, I don't...
Great. The material I was able to access was limited to the several common elements like carbon and iron, but there's several ones that are completely new to me, and I can't seem to get much information onto the others.
Twilight stopped mid-explanation when she saw the doubtful look on Matt's face.
What?
Twilight, let me just stop you there. Science, it really wasn't my best subject in school, so I'm afraid you might have to wait for Charles, Matt said, and he gave a helpless chuckle when Twilight pouted. His humor eventually gave way to a serious expression. I did have something I wanted to ask you about, though. More like, show you.
And what would that be?
Twilight asked with an arched eyebrow.
Where's this coming from?
He looks worried, and she couldn't help but observe when he pulled out a small coin from one of his pockets. Twilight's eyes went from the coin to Matt's face as he held the coin in the flat of his palm. She opened her mouth to ask another question when the coin began to quiver, then rise slowly out of his hand. It hovered uncertainly before dropping back into his palm. I can't get much more than that out of light objects. Apparently I have more control while in combat, as well as other ability—
What?!
Twilight nearly screamed as her eyes darted between Matt's face and the coin.
That's magic! You never said that you could do magic. How are you doing that without a horn for projection? Do you use some kind of focus or an aria? You mentioned about other abilities. What else can you do? How do you do it?
The questions came tumbling out in rapid succession as Twilight tried to digest this new development. Dozens of theories came into view for supremacy in her mind like a gigantic battle royale. Twilight? Matt's hesitant question snapped Twilight out of her rampant theorizing.
Wait. When did Matt get so close?
She asked herself, only to realize that in her zeal for answers, she had hopped up onto the table and was currently looming precariously over Matt. The human leaned back into the chair in an attempt to buy himself room and was looking decidedly nervous when Twilight was being so close and showing no signs of halting her advance. The snap of teleportation was almost deafening in her ears as she retreated as quickly as she could back to her seat.
Sorry. It's just so unexpected. Okay. What I meant was, I didn't think that it was possible. Do you know how you're doing it? Tell me everything. Is this happening with anyone else?
Again, the questions were posed in rapid succession as Twilight tried to not think about how close the two of them had just been. Well, as to how I'm doing it, I I really don't know. I was honestly hoping that you might be able to help me out with that. As for the others, I know of at least 2 that can do that. Lana has been showing signs of having abilities, and Commander Bradford had as well, Matt said with a light smile.
Commander Bradford? As in the commander of this place?
Twilight blurted out quickly, and when Matt nodded, her mind again was overrun with questions.
When he asked me all of those questions earlier, he was really asking if his friends could use magic, and if Lana has the ability, then the headaches she was having are likely due to exertion.
As she reviewed the conversation she had with the Commander, a disturbing thought came into mind.
He asked if I could design a device to block magical abilities. I just assumed that they would be used against those things that want to hurt everyone, but what if I was wrong?
We were hoping that you might be able to show us how to use these abilities more efficiently, and there may be others who may join us, so do you think you can teach us how to use magic? All nervousness flew from Twilight and a wide grin spread across her face.
Think I can? I know I can. I've been studying it for most of my life, so I'm the most qualified to do it. You mentioned that there might be others. Do you know how many will be joining us?
Not yet, I'm afraid, Matt shrugged. It'll be Lana and me for certain. I won't know the exact number for a few days. Well, I hate to just drop in and dump all this on you and then leave again, but I'm afraid my schedule is really tight today. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Twilight lied just a little.
We all have our parts to play, right?
10:20 a.m., May 15th, 2015, Stardust Labs. Matt exited Twilight's habitat and out of the lab entirely before turning down the corridor to his right. He passed several other personnel into the hallway before ascending a staircase to the briefing rooms into the barracks. Matt didn't even bother knocking as he pushed into the room to reveal the strike team leaders, all clustered around a monitor. His view was blocked, but he didn't have to look to know what it showed. An increasingly familiar song about the periodic table of elements was blaring from its speakers. Gentlemen, I trust that your concerns about the nature of our guest have been addressed, Matt asked the assembled officers, but not one reacted to the question. The only movement came from Lana, who gave him a nod and a thumbs up. Well, then if there are no other concerns... Again, no response was apparent, as all seemed enraptured with the monitor and what was shown in it. He waited a moment longer before turning and heading back out of the briefing room. Have their concerns been addressed? Matt just stepped out of the briefing room before he heard the question, and he nearly jumped out of his skin to see the person asking it, and it was none other than Bradford. I believe so, sir. Things progressed just as you predicted. I don't know if this will smooth out all of their problems with this, but I think the big ones are out of the way. Very good, Bradford said as he turned to leave, though he stopped when Matt asked another question. Did you really predict this happening, sir? Matt asked uncertainly. I mean, did your foresight allow you to see this confrontation between Lana, myself, and the strike leaders? No, it didn't, Bradford answered without turning around. I've been in various commands long enough to anticipate how subordinates react in certain situations. I could order them to participate in this program and not give them any reason. I could not answer any of their questions and they would have still followed my orders, but they would have doubts. If I told them exactly what you did, they would worry I was holding something back or only showing what I wanted them to see. I suspect they said as much, right? Before Matt could agree, Bradford continued. Good work, Sergeant. I'll be expecting a report from you once your lessons begin on how to control your gift. Understood, sir. 12:34 p.m., May 15th, 2015, EA Reactor. Status updates, gentlemen? Shen announced through the public address systems into the reaction control booth. A half-dozen engineers scrambled around one of the reactor cylinders and were busy attaching what appeared to be large rings around the outer edge of the cylinder's base. A long moment passed while the engineers continued their frenzied pace before all of them took a step back from the reactor. One engineer turned up to the control booth and tapped his headset. Installation is complete on Cylinder 5. 5 startup is scheduled for approximately 15 seconds from now. Very good. Testing will begin 10 seconds after cylinder startup. Please clear the chamber. The engineers complied, and a few joined Shen into the control booth, all shown signs of nervousness as the reactor cylinder in question began to power up. 10, 9, 8. Shen counted down as he reached for the button onto the freshly installed console beside the main control kiosk into the control room. 3, 2, 1. The elderly engineer held his breath and pressed the button. The ring around the reactor cylinder flashed and the glow of energized Illyrium vanished instantly. After checking and double-checking the readings from his console, Shen allowed himself to grin as he turned to the other engineers. Congratulations, gentlemen. The test was completely successful. Report to the foundry to assist with fabrication on the other devices. Thank you all again for your hard work. The assembled workers nodded and turned to the exit to the control booth, but they all stepped aside when the door opened to reveal Commander Bradford. Charles, I hear that you have good news for me. He stated as much as he asked, and he stepped into the room, and he didn't so much as spare a glance to the other engineers as they took the chance to leave. Oh, yes, Shen said with a smile as he indicated towards the reactor onto the other side of the viewing glass. We completed small-scale testing onto the Rule Breaker project earlier this morning as a proof of concept, and we have successfully tested our large-scale version of the EA reactor. At the very least, we have now a reliable way of shutting down the reactor that won't involve the unnecessary loss of Illyrium or the lives of engineers. How does it work? Bradford asked. Twilight was very verbose on that subject. The device, when activated, interrupts the collection of energy from the field. Any spell we're currently being channeled is interrupted, and any further attempts to cast spells are negated. Specifically, the device hijacks the energy that is being gathered for the spell and simply returns it to the field unused so long as the device is active. And the wearable versions that I requested? Oh, yes. Shen nodded while looking uncomfortable. He reached under the console and retrieved his suitcase. As he placed the case onto the table and opened it, he explained. These are the current prototypes that are meant to be worn. Activation and deactivation is achieved by depressing the button onto the side. The principles are... What are you doing? Shen's explanation was interrupted when Bradford walked up and slipped one of the watch-like devices around his left wrist. We haven't begun testing with live specimens yet. Before any further objection could be registered, Bradford tapped the button onto the device and let out a long-drawn sigh. Shen held his breath and looked for the device to Bradford's face, and for the first time, noticed several signs of fatigue. His face was pale and bags were shown under his eyes. When his sigh finally reached its end and he reopened his eyes, Shen could see that they were bloodshot and drooping. Are you alright? Bradford focused dully on Shen before replying a moment later. Fine. I'm fine. Keep up the good work. Without another word, he turned and left the control booth. 8:25 a.m., May 20th, 2015, Barracks.
Are you sure about this?
Lana asked with a hint of uncertainty as she stood beside Matt in the commons area of the barracks.
Perhaps it would be better to introduce them slowly to some of this information rather than dumping it all on them at once? I'm afraid Bradford thinks otherwise, and I'm inclined to agree. It's best for the ones who are showing signs of this gift to be caught early and trained, rather than having them stumble upon it when they might not be prepared for the consequences. Matt answered quickly. I suppose we should be thankful the first class is gonna be only 5, including us. I can barely imagine what it'd be like having to manage dozens of soldiers who aren't aware of what they're getting into. Once Valen gets the testing equipment done, we might have that many. I just hope that they play nice, or I might have to take them down to the PT room for some hand-to-hand training instead.
Lana grinned wickedly. I don't think that Bradford would appreciate you breaking soldiers before they've had a chance to go out and fight, Lana, Matt said with a chuckle. Still, I don't think that there's gonna be a problem. Once they get this over their initial shock thing, I think that they'll come around. We did, and so did Zhang, after a while.
Speaking of Zhang, do you know what's been eating at him lately? I haven't seen him crack a smile in, well, ever, but his scowl is more pronounced. Do you think that he'd be happier with the possibilities of having superpowers, you know?
Lana sighed dramatically.
I guess that there's no pleasing some people.
Matt couldn't resist a chuckle at the dour man's expense, though any further conversation was halted when the 3 other soldiers entered the commons and made their way to Matt and Lana. The most noticeable of the pack was a square-jawed and buzz-cut monster of a man with at least 6.5 feet of pure muscle. The second was a Hispanic man of average height and build. The third was Captain Fujikawa herself. Ah, okay, they're all from Strike 6, Matt realized once he recognized the diminutive captain. So, glad you all could make it, Matt said affably to the newcomers while motioning for them to follow. If you'll follow me to the cargo elevators, we'll get started. Captain Fujikawa knows a bit about why you're here, but I expect that you two don't. Both of the men shook their heads, so Matt continued. I don't exactly know the mechanics of it, but both of you have shown the potential for certain extraordinary abilities, and we're now going to speak with an expert who will teach us how to better harness these abilities. The group went through several corridors before finally stopping at the elevators onto the far side of the barracks complex. I do have to warn you though, what you'll see during training combat cannot be discussed with anyone that is not part of this group. So, if you have any doubts or second thoughts, now is the time to back out. The elevator door opened and no one showed signs of backing out, so the sergeant motioned for the group to enter the elevator. Once all the soldiers were inside, he entered, as well as pushing the button for the service. Who exactly is this expert, and what abilities are we talking about? One of the soldiers asked. I am afraid I don't want to spoil the surprise as to what we'll be learning, Mr. Rodriguez, Matt said after glancing momentarily at the soldier's name badge. The expert is also unique. She's
a little girl that comes up to about your waist,
Lana interrupted with a smile.
She's also extremely sensitive, so be sure to be on your best behavior.
Right. That. She's very young, and despite her outward appearance, she's just like us on the inside. Please keep that in mind when introductions are made. Matt finished diplomatically, and he could see out of the corner of his eye that Lana was smiling serenely, but her fists were clenching and unclenching in time with her breath. The next question was asked by the giant, who spoke with a Russian accent whose ID tag said, Lyra Malov. Why do we have this child? From what I understand, any survivors we rescue are returned to their countries once they are clear from it. That question will be answered itself shortly, Matt answered with a smile as the elevator reached the surface. Before you judge this expert too harshly, I'd like you to keep in mind that this expert has been helping us for almost as long as she's been here. Oh, ye of little faith, Rodriguez said with a chuckle to try and relieve the growing tension in the elevator. We might be soldiers, but we're not monsters. I don't think anyone here would do anything to bully a kid. It's not like she's alien, right? Matt could only grin at the other soldiers' poor choice of words as the elevator doors opened to reveal the mostly empty warehouse. The eyes of the soldiers were immediately drawn to two 20-foot cargo containers that appeared to be suspended midair in fields of purple energy. Two of the soldiers in the elevator car weren't really shocked by the sight. One was forewarned, but still surprised, while the last two could only stand agape.
You may lower the containers now, Twilight.
Valen's voice could be heard from the side.
Total combined weight of the two fully loaded containers was over 100 tons. Do you not feel any strain?
Here it comes, Matt thought as the attention of the newcomers whipped to the side to see Dr. Valen and Twilight standing to the side. Twilight smiled energetically, though Matt could see some signs of effort as the two containers lowered back down to the concrete.
Just a bit. Simple lifting isn't really too hard, though as weight increases, so does the energy required. Okay, alright. Do you know your maximum potential lift weight?
Valen asked curiously before her gaze flicked up to catch the sight of the soldiers entering the warehouse.
Ah, it seems our guests have arrived. My questions can wait until later. Good morning, Twilight.
Both Matt and Lana said in unison, and they couldn't help but smile at the synchronicity, as well as the smile Twilight returned to them.
Oh, good morning. I hope you two are ready to learn because I'm really excited about teaching, though I am a little bit worried about how I'm supposed to teach you if you don't have much practice in doing magic already. Most unicorns have a basic grasp of how to form and channel spells before they start to specialize, but oh, I didn't see your friends there.
Twilight said as she craned her neck around Matt and Lana to catch the sight of the three humans that had froze near the elevator.
Hello, my name is Twilight Sparkle.
Matt glanced back to see the three soldiers frozen near the elevator, and he could almost read exactly what was going through their minds. Both Rodriguez and the Russian had their knees slightly bent with their right feet back, and their right hands were grasping at their hips in an attempt to draw sidearms that weren't there. Fujikawa stood ramrod straight in her arms forcefully at her sides, but Matt could see the muscles in her right arm tensing in a subconscious reaction similar to the other two soldiers. Don't stop smiling, Twilight, Matt thought as he saw that she recognized the variations of panic that the new humans were displaying.
Yeah, I suppose introductions are in order. These are some of our friends that might have had the same potential that we do. The first is Captain Yumiko Fujikawa, the next is Mr. Rodriguez, and the last is Mr. Romalov.
Hello.
Twilight tried again in a valiant effort to stay upbeat in her face of the newcomers who were finally realizing just what situation they were now in.
My name is Twilight Sparkle, and I'm here to teach you all about magic. I've been studying the subject my entire life, and I'm just simply thrilled that I have the opportunity to share my expertise with you all. I honestly can't say what you'll be able to do after our classes, but I just can't wait to see what happens.
Twilight's smile became positively beatific as she finished up her speech and took a breath.
Now, Matt had shown me a little bit of what he can do, but I don't know what the rest of you are capable of. Who wants to share first?
Nearly a minute's worth of silence passed by before one of the newcomers was able to respond.
What?